Hello, my name is Jennifer McNeil. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for NFI's North American bus and coach business, including New Flyer and MCI. Today it is my privilege to welcome Mr. Marco D'Angelo, the President and CEO of the Canadian Urban Transit Association, for a chat about some of the most critical issues faced today by public transit agencies in Canada. During his tenure at CUTA, Marco has championed some historic firsts in Canadian transit history, including the first ever federal relief funding for public transit operations and the creation of a federal permanent transit fund, which will help transform public transit in cities across Canada. Thank you for joining us today, Marco. We truly appreciate all that you've done for the industry here in Canada, especially throughout what has been, I think, the most challenging time in public transit history.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. It's great to be here with you.
So, speaking of some of these historic investments, with the announcement of some of the investments in public transit by the Canadian federal government, how do you think having dedicated funding will change transit agencies' approach to zero-emission buses and the broader investments in fleets and infrastructure? Canada historically has never had federal capital funding for public transit. Are there any gaps in the models that proposed that you can see?
Well, there's a lot more predictability now. So with the new 5-year fund to help systems to electrify, we're already seeing some exciting announcements. So Toronto has the largest electric fleet in North America. City of Ottawa is completely electrifying by 2036. Vancouver's transit system has a new net zero plan. So many transit systems were committed to electrification before federal funds were announced. So after they were, the question changed. So it changed from whether that they would electrify or not to when. So I think about the larger question of capital investment. So having the predictability of the permanent transit fund has certainly been very exciting. It's created a permanent pipeline of funding. So that's indeed historic. But you ask, are there gaps? Yes. It doesn't make sense to expand transit systems if they can't afford to run their vehicles, or to help them buy electric vehicles without helping to keep them running.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I do agree with you that the predictability is really, I think, what has enabled some long-term planning and fleet transitions and thoughtfulness in the deployment. It's really very exciting. Investments in zero-emission public transit on both sides of the border benefit Canada. It leads to good jobs in both the manufacturing and the clean energy sectors. And we're just so fortunate here in Canada to have such a vibrant presence in both industries. We actually really think that today's issue is one of urgency now. So we can't really afford to take years between these new investments and the resulting zero-emission vehicles hitting the road. Not just the economic recovery, employment recovery, but this urgent need for climate action. Kind of all depends on things happening now. So recently, we saw our country take the initiative with this really ambitious goal of 5,000 zero-emission buses on the road by 2025. How do you think we're doing?
Well, I'd like to mention first that the large Canadian footprint of electric bus manufacturers like New Flyer is one of the best in the world. Now, of course, your market only isn't in Canada, it's around the world. But as sales of electric buses expand here, I hope it'll remain an important one. We wouldn't be able to meet our electric bus targets without you. So it's important to keep in mind, though, that the targets were made before COVID. And as we all know, the pandemic has been very disruptive. But despite these challenges, it looks like we could still meet our goal. Orders are coming in. New funding has led to a flurry of new announcements. Brampton alone, is buying more than 10% of Canada's 5,000 zero-emission bus goal. But we need to keep stressing the importance of a fast rollout of federal funds. But here, too, I'm hopeful. Cities from coast to coast are well on their way to electrification. The challenge that we have in this industry is that capital and electrification investments tell only half the story. Operating support's essential. We know ridership's down by about half thanks to COVID. That means our ridership is down too. So if we want all the benefits of transit meeting climate targets, we need people on transit to do that. And we can't if there's not enough service to meet the needs of the public.
Do you think there's anything that we can do differently as an industry to enable and accelerate the adoption of zero-emission technology in public transit and kind of bridge that gap?
Well, certainly. I mean, targets are helpful. So, talking about 2035, the government had a mandatory target that light duty cars and passenger trucks would be zero emission by that year. So, we're getting to that. There's all new procurement models that are being looked at different cities across the country, and that's certainly possible. And we're not starting from scratch. Much of our infrastructure, like charging, has been eligible for funding under the current Invest in Canada program. So we have millions of people that are counting on us every day to reach their destinations, and they're expecting us to use the highest quality technology that we have available. And so cities are doing that. We've got great partners from the federal government and the provinces, and great business partners as well that are going to make that possible. So I think it's a really exciting time.
I agree. And you mentioned the mandate for light duty cars and passenger truck sales to be zero emission by 2035, and that recently was brought forward by 5 years in terms of commitments by the government of Canada. I think that exploring some new business models would be a really interesting way to accelerate things. I also think that it'll be really interesting to find out, as agencies now have that predictability in funding and that ability to do fleet transition planning, just to see exactly where we as a transit industry line up in terms of zero emission adoption. It may very well be that we could set those targets similar to the light duty car and passenger truck targets. Do you think that that's something that would be achievable? And is there anything else that we would need to do to be able to set similar targets in our sector?
I completely agree. I think those targets are very achievable, and it happens when industry can cooperate with the public sector. And we've seen that on a number of fronts. And I think that we've come a long way, where we've seen the different levels of government come to the table, work with local agencies to develop programs, announce those programs, and then great partnerships with our friends in the private sector, with NFI Group, that's constantly working on vehicle technology enhancements, because we need to ensure that our industry and our business partners can create a safe and reliable, scalable approach for public transit. So whether it's a small community or a large one, that we have the partnerships and the relationships with business to meet tomorrow's growing electric bus demand. And we really need to do that as we reduce the amount of greenhouse gas emissions that are responsible by the transportation sector. We need to do that, and businesses are ready to do that. And most importantly, as we look forward to 2035, we need to impress the transit riders of tomorrow. And they expect more from us, and our agencies are ready to deliver. And we're so happy that we have so many great business partners that we can get there together.
Well, I'd like to thank you for all of the work that you've done over the past couple of years. You really did a wonderful job mobilizing all of the partners together in kind of this common goal of keeping transit supported through the pandemic. I really think we have a precious and valuable opportunity today to do something similar for climate change and for that transition to zero emission public transportation. We've never before in Canada's history seen both climate commitments and funding dollars flow to public transit in this way. So I think it's a really, really exciting time for the industry, and I certainly do appreciate what you have done shepherding us all down that path.
Yes, thank you for saying that. I think it's been, it's been a very difficult couple of years, but we've had great partnerships between business and the public sector to really impress the importance of great public transit and the need to keep our frontline workers able to get to work and to do the things that they need to do to get us through the pandemic. And thank you for your leadership as well in working with government and local agencies in having that happen and maintaining service levels and such with our agencies through the entire pandemic. Appreciate it.
Well, on behalf of Paul Subry and the leadership team at NFI Group and all of our businesses, I'd like to say heartfelt thank you for joining us today and sharing your perspectives and your expertise. It's a very exciting time to be here.
Thank you. My pleasure.